This is Cultivate Your Signature. Key number one, discover your gifts and talents. So it's very important that you go through the process of recognizing what you do well, what you seem to be prone to become expert in, so that you know uh, how your gifts and talents will help you with your life assignment. Your life assignment could be that you have a calling to become a teacher or to become a doctor, become a lawyer, um, work with the youth, work with a number of organizations, maybe resolve some issues with cancer, try to find a treatment alternative. Whatever it is, whatever your life assignment is, that means that you're going to have to know what your life assignment is. You're going to have to also know your gifts and talents. And so your gift could be, for me, my gift is teaching, and then the talent is writing. And so then I'm assigned or I'm called to community college students. So I teach first year composition. And then there are other areas of my life where I have struggled and made poor choices, especially in finances. And so I will tailor some of my approaches in terms of the videos I create, the books I write, and sometimes I'll bring some aspects of that missed learning into the classroom. And one of those missed learning opportunities was the 2 year transition planning. And so when you are within the context, you can be in high school, you can be in middle school, you can be in elementary school. When you recognize, you may not necessarily have a full awareness of who you are, but you recognize that you do something well, or you get feedback from people, from your parents, that you do something well. I remember lining up all my dolls and bears, and I will put paper and pen in front of them, and I would teach them something. And I have no idea what I was teaching them, but I was teaching them something. And then I graduated to the little neighborhood kids, and I would march them throughout the neighborhood, and then I would line them up, sit them down in the dirt, put pen and paper in front of them, and teach them something. So I don't know what, again, I don't know what I was teaching them. What this suggests is that there was an indication of who I was going to become um, in my childhood. That's why you see a lot of times the child who is going to become a doctor later in life walking around taking the temperature of her bears, or nurse, um, taking the temperature of her bears, trying to assess the bear's issue, medical issue, even at a very young age. When I recognized the writing, it was in two stages. One, it was when I think we were in high school, ninth grade or something, and we had to go to an assembly and listen to someone speak about something, and then after that, we had to do a quick write up. I noticed then that I had something. I don't know what it is that I noticed, but I noticed that there was an ease in the way that I was writing, that it just came natural to me, or something like that. Then many many years later, when I became an adult and I met a guy, he's the one who actually called attention to my writing. He looked at the grammar aspect of it. He thought it was um, he just saw the skill. So I must have been blind to it all those years until someone came along and pointed it out. So that was two-part discovery, and then of course with the gifts of teaching, the full discovery of that came when I had to be a drop-in tutor. And initially, when I was going to college, I was going for the money. I was going to become a computer science major. And so I didn't have any other, understanding of anything else. And so that's what I was going to do. And then later in college, I decided to tutor, and I was assigned to a classroom where the professor taught, and he was teaching certain ways, and I thought it was very interesting how he was teaching the students. So I just took note of it, regardless of whether or not I thought I was going to become a teacher. And then I would have to meet with the students and discuss their papers or their work or something like that. And I just kind of enjoyed that. It was strange. And then I began to tutor outside of the classroom in the tutoring center, and just it just came natural to me to be able to explain something to someone. And then one day I was actually the only one in the drop-in writing tutoring center, and uh, a student came by, and he had me. He was trying to understand. He was a foreign student, and he was trying to understand a particular concept. It was literary slash political type work, Hannah Arendt, and the title of the work was on totalitarianism. And there was a mention or reference to this ideal, or either it was either actually in the text or in the assignment instructions. But there's the idea was there's a that totalitarianism is a means to an end, and I hadn't read that text because it wasn't necessarily part of my reading list, but I was kind of forced to try to explain what that actually meant. And when I began to explain it, I put it in the context of romantic relationship. I don't know, it just came to me. And I said to the student, what if you had this girl who was interested in you, and I mean, interested in your friend, um, but she went by way of you. She went by way of you, tried to get to know you, act like she was more interested in you. But her goal was to actually get to the end goal of trying to get with your friend. And so she used you as a means to an end. And then I connected it to the totalitarianism with the suggestion that many authoritarian type figures don't always want to use torture, or don't always want to use totalitarianism, or don't always want to use certain types of coercive measures, but they have to use it as a means to an end. And so that gave me an opportunity to discover that talent for sort of explaining something, and getting the student to understand. And he got it. He just got it because he came from a country also where he struggled with that concept of totalitarianism. And then, of course, the romantic relationship and analogy helped him to understand it just as much. So this is Cultivate Your Signature. Key number one: discover your gifts and talents. This is Cultivate Your Signature. Key number two: address fixed mindset. So when you are thinking about a fixed mindset, you're thinking about it in terms of the psychology term that Carol Dweck has defined within her book Mindset, and she's essentially looking at the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset. Fixed mindset, you believe all of your intellectual and innate abilities are fixed, unchanged. Um, with a growth mindset, you believe that they're not changed, and that they're actually flexible, and that you can grow. So, for example, if you have a fixed mindset about a particular issue, and the issue is, I can't do this, I can't take this test, I can't pass it. Okay, then you have cut off any ability to learn a new strategy for passing the test, right? Because every test has a solution, every problem has a solution. It just depends upon how you arrive at the solution, the strategy. So that's why your math teacher will tell you to show your work. Don't just put the answer, because the teacher needs to know that you know how to solve the problem level by level, line by line. I remember when I was grading papers in the teachers center lab area, and I saw this math professor, and she was actually grading all of her students work, and she was looking at each student's paper and each mathematical problem line by line, There were times where she used a check mark, and then there were times where she actually used utilized an X. And so she was, and then in some ways the person still got to the answer, or in some ways they did not. But she was operating to me with a growth mindset, in a sense that let me show you where you are still struggling in terms of a fixed mindset with this particular math problem. And then let me further show you how you can resolve that particular issue with the growth mindset. And so when you are cultivating your signature, you're going to have to address those areas of fixed mindset, because there are some areas that you're going to do well and you're going to shine, and then you're going to get stuck in that success. And getting stuck in that success, even though it represents it represents a growth mindset, it could also represent a fixed mindset, that you believe that the only success you will ever have is that one success. If you pay attention to people just in general, sometimes it can be celebrities, public figures, people you know, they're always talking about that one particular thing that they did and how well they did it. And then they get into sort of like this glee on their faces, and they're smiling about it, they're talking about it, it's just with so much ease. But then when you ask them, so what are your future plans, they get stuck. They can't answer the question. They don't know what they're going to do, because they have been riding so much on the success of that particular one thing, that they can't move themselves into another understanding that I can achieve something else, or I can be successful at the next level, and then the further the next level. And so it's hard to pull out of them any sort of original ideas, because they are fixated on that one particular thing that they did, and or they got success in. Say for instance, you have a person who says, I may get a student who comes from the high school environment to my college classroom and says, well, okay, I've always gotten all A's on my papers. Well, you might have gotten all A's on your papers within a certain environment, but when you come to the college environment, it's a different type of environment. You're going to have to relearn writing strategies for this context. And so they're surprised when they don't receive an A on a paper, and that creates a fixed mindset in them. That's why Carol Dweck suggests in much of her work, her research, that we need to praise students' work appropriately. Because if you tell them that everything they did well is, I mean, everything they did is done well and great, and um, they don't think they need to improve, you're going to see that manifested in other areas of their life, especially in the workforce, when improvement is part of the process. You always improving. You can't get stuck on a particular sales success, right? You can't get stuck on a particular account that you were able to secure that also brought the company money. You can't go through the hallway saying, okay, I did this, everybody needs to recognize me. No, there's still more work to be done. And when you have a fixed mindset, it's in this vein that you don't think that you have any more to do, when you always have more to do, because your gifts and talents and your life assignment requires you to do more. So, cultivate your signature. Key number two, address fixed mindset. This is cultivate your signature. Key number three, perfect your grit. So, your grit is something that Angela Lee Duckworth researches in her field, and she makes she defines the difference between grit and then self-control. Self-control is connected to momentary success, right? You achieve momentary success. If you are sitting at your job and you haven't jumped out of the seat and ran out of the job, then you are exercising self-control, right? You get up every day, you manage yourself every day, you get into the car, you go to work, you do what you're supposed to do, you come back home, you cook dinner. That's really exercising self control. That's a self control goal. However, when you want to achieve something long term, it's going to take a lot more passion and perseverance for long-term goals. So grit is that passion and perseverance for long-term goals. We are accustomed to hearing grit or understanding grit within the sports context, right? The coach would say you need to have more grit, right? You need to exercise more grit. That's sort of pushing yourself even more. Within a non-sports context, it's going to require study. It's going to require learning. It's going to require improving yourself. It's going to require adopting a growth mindset. It's also going to require you to stick with that particular problem that you are trying to solve, and that problem you are trying to solve could be your life assignment, and then that life assignment could take 10, 15, 20, 25 years or just exceed your lifetime. When you think about it like this, either you're going to be the person who's going to pass the baton to the next generation or the next group of people who are going to take that problem and then try to continue to solve it, or you're going to be sort of like Queen Elizabeth who died on the job, or you have some celebrities who were still working until the day of their death, right? And so it just depends on what you're trying to solve, what problem you're trying to solve, who you are as an individual. Do you have the capacity? Do you have the passion? Do you have the perseverance? Because you're going to get your heart broken. Whenever you are trying to go after anything to help anybody to solve any issue, is just ask any of the people uh, who work with youth or who work with social services or who work with the homeless or even in the medical field. Here it is, you try to tell someone to go down the right path, and it looks like the person is going down the right path, but then they get distracted and they do whatever they want to do, and that messes with your heart because you thought that you were pouring into someone to help them along their way. But it's going to happen. It's like the person who the male youth pastor or male youth center director who decides to appeal to the youth in sort of like gang infested, violence ridden environment to try to get them not to join a gang or not to pick up a gun, not to be violent. And then you find out that person has been arrested for exactly those two or three things, right? And so now you have to go and visit that person at the jail, try to talk to them again, try to pull them back into a sense of understanding about life, and that could be heartbreaking. But if your goal is to solve a particular issue with the youth, then you're still going to have to walk it out. You're going to have to grieve over it. You may have to grieve over the young man who decided to pursue violence and now it's going to go to jail for many years. You may have to adopt a writing program to sort of help that person journal through their heart as a result of, breaking their own heart. But the grit is going to require you to have passion and perseverance. So you can't have this as a particular role until you feel like you're going to get another role. How many times do we keep hearing many teachers over the course of maybe like the last 6 months or so quitting teaching and joining OnlyFans? And I say to that, and it's a criticism, that you didn't really want to be a teacher, you just needed a job. You didn't want to solve any sort of learning issue for students. You just needed something. You probably were good at communicating information. Students were able to understand you, but you complained about the pay, or you complained about the hours, or you complained about whatever you complained about, and then you decided to jump off that path that you were actually very effective on and jump on another path that's going to give you less time to be effective but more money. All that tells me is that you never really wanted the job in the first place. You never really, it was a job to you, rather. It wasn't a calling. It wasn't something that you were willing to commit to, because you have plenty of teachers who have been in the field who are now retiring after being in the field for 50, 60, uh, 70 years. And they went there to teach and to learn, to improve the lives of students, to help to prepare them for a transition. They made maybe changes in the education industry or whatever. And so now when they retire, they are retiring, of course, passing on the baton to the next school of teachers, but also they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they did what they were supposed to do with the assignment that they had. And so when you are thinking about your signature, your signature is going to take time to learn. When we had to learn cursive or learn how to write in school, that's a whole elementary school process, uh, what we call grammar school. And so that takes some time to learn the steps to how to write and then how to write in cursive. And you have to stick with it. So this is Cultivate Your Signature, key number 3, perfect your grit. Your signature key number 4, resolve learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is essentially your inability to find a solution to a particular problem, right? It's just becoming too difficult for you to find the right solution, even if there is a solution to the problem. Lately, there has been this push to get chronically homeless people off the streets and into shelters or into some sort of temporary centers or something like that, right? But then you have the same homeless people, right? Because they want to break up all of the tent encampments, these cities, these local jurisdictions. But then you would have the chronically homeless people who are sleeping outside in the elements, weather issues, things like that, complain about the shelter system and the rules and the curfew, and it's not right. And I'm a grown individual, and I should be able to come in when I want to come in. So the learned helplessness in that regard is a person not really wanting to adopt an obvious solution to their chronic homelessness, that or receive or accept a solution. Look, if you can get into a shelter for 2 or 3 months, if it's permitted, it'll give you an opportunity to set up a PO box. It'll give you an opportunity to rest your mind a little bit. It'll give you an opportunity to set up social services, food stamps, disability services because you need an address. Sure, for most shelters, you have to take everything with you. So it'll be an opportunity to get a storage right facility or something like that, but it's an opportunity. But when you have a person who exercises learned helplessness, they don't see opportunity even in opportunity. That opportunities are around them. People they have access to resources, they have access to a network, they have access to a center that they can go into, but they would rather be homeless. I remember a particular time when I had to stay at the Salvation Army uh, during my sort of stint with losing my job during the financial recession, and then going back and forth with family, and then homeless shelters as well. And there were some people who were actually getting a disability check. The disability check, from what I understood, what another person told me about, it was like $1,200 a month, and they were getting a disability check. But instead of to go get a place, they complained that the rent would be too high. Say the rent was going to be 650 to 7. Yeah, but that still gives you a lot. Even if it was 7, um, you still had $300 to $500 left over that you could sort of work in terms of managing. No, what I saw was they were getting a disability check, and then they would park themselves right in front of Salvation Army on the grass, and they will sit out in the sun all day. Sometimes they will go use the restroom at the Salvation Army. If the Salvation Army was a cooling station, they will go and get some water, and then they'll come back out and they'll sit right there on the grass. And then on a Friday, they will go to the liquor store that was around the corner, get them some liquor, and then drink it, fall out on the ground, right? Hopefully, no one beat them up or anything. And then they would just repeat that process all over again. but you're sitting in front of a location with a bunch of people in there with resources, with resources, with resource. I can't with resources. And so you can be a person who is sitting right in front of someone with the instructions you need for your next journey, and you can just completely refuse to accept that person's instructions. And so that's part of your own learned helplessness, that it becomes your own pattern. It becomes your belief system after a while, and it's likely some root cause. Maybe in school you didn't pass the test and you said you can't pass it, so you're not going to try harder. And then you moved into high school, you couldn't make the cheerleading team, so you're not going to try anymore. Then you moved into the workforce, you got fired off your job for coming in late, and so you just decided not to resolve that issue anymore, uh, by actually coming in on time. And then you went into a marriage, and the marriage failed because you couldn't stop cheating, or you couldn't make enough money to to sustain yourself as an adult within the marriage, and so the wife decided to divorce you, or you decided to divorce. And then there could be actual a medical issue where you got hurt on the job, and instead of actually resting and learn and healing from that process, you decided to just go on ahead and get back to it and mess up a lot of the areas on your body. You can be in romantic relationships where it just you keep jumping from toxic relationship to toxic relationship because it works, because you really do like toxicity. And so these are all types or categories and forms of learned helplessness that you need to resolve if you're going to cultivate your signature. Because think about a lot of these people who have become famous, they got money, they got now access to money and resources, but something in their uh, mental mental disposition is showing up in their money and how they spend their money and what they do with their money. And so something is not healed and whole, so that all of their shenanigans, their public social shenanigans, are actually taking more of a priority than the signature itself. I can point to many artists. I don't want to call attention to their names right now, maybe for trademark purposes. But here it is: they sing extremely well. They are extremely talented. But they have to get on, social media and act a fool and do stupid stuff and things like that, so that we are more preoccupied with their tomfoolery than we are with their signature. That's also a form of learned helplessness. So cultivate your signature. Key number 4, resolve learned helplessness. This is cultivate your signature. Key number 5, set standards, boundaries, and expectations, SBEs. So this is something that we always need to do, whether we are at a young age or 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever. But it's very important that you set these standards, boundaries, and expectations early in life, especially within the academic environment. That's where you get the opportunity to kind of discover your gifts and talents, but also begin to develop in them. If you are preoccupied with going to house parties, school parties, hanging out with your friends, doing everything but what you need to do in terms of getting your studies out, it's going to show up later. It's going to show up later in terms of gaps in your understanding. Here it is: you want to become a math major, but you're not taking the time to learn math where you are and where for where you need to go. And so you're not setting the right kind of standards, boundaries, and expectations. Now we always think about it as an external situation, but it's really internal. The boundaries, the standards, the boundaries, and expectations is not always that you need to set them with people. You need to set them with yourself. Because if you manage yourself well, if you do what you need to do for yourself, then it's going to be obvious when you are dealing with people. That means you have to have some sort of awareness of who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table. If your future career, your intended career objective is to become whatever it is you're going to become, you're going to have much study. That means you're going to have to take the time to study. One of the things that I hate, that I didn't really pay attention to, was when I was going to college. I remember a time where there was a season of study. I was so engrossed in it, you couldn't get me out of the book. And then there was a season where I allowed myself to get distracted with friends who meant me no good. And so then later, I did well with certain papers. There were some papers I procrastinated on, even though I got an A on some papers. That's just a talent operating in me. But as I came to understand, when I became a teacher, that anything that you write the night before is not of quality. It's not quality work, and that's something that I had to learn. But when I became a teacher, English teacher, there were some things that I recognized in terms of my gaps in understanding about um, learning capacity, sometimes teaching delivery. Teaching delivery is always going to be an ongoing, ever learning, lifelong learning task, right? You always take professional development. You go to conferences. You hone your craft. You do what you need to do on your own as well. That's always going to be something that's lifelong. However, I do recognize that there were some issues with the way that I was teaching and the way that I was delivering instruction when I first started. And I feel like even though I did very well as a graduate TA in terms of sort of understanding what was going on in terms of the process, I see that I had missed a lot of opportunities to learn how to teach a particular text in a certain step by step fashion that I had to learn later when I actually became a teacher. The opportunity was still there when I was a college student. I didn't take the opportunity because I was distracted with friends. And so it goes back to learning, because in anything that you do, especially something that is a calling or a life assignment for you, you want to become an expert in it. You want to become a subject matter expert. That if anyone asks you a question, if you had to give a panel interview, you could answer it. So that means when you are cultivating your signature, the standards that you need to meet are your own, but also the standards of the industry that you're working in, the environment, the context, the anything that is related to your future intended career. But also set boundaries, because even within your career, you can move from hanging out with friends in college to now hanging out with friends at your job. So that means you are still not cultivating the signature that is required for you to operate fully, even in your career. And then expectations, setting expectations. What are your expectations for yourself? Okay, do you want to just come in, clock in, do your work, clock out, and not make a true contribution right to the field? Because there's a difference between working the job and making a contribution. You are not necessarily a contributor when you clock in, clock out. That's just a job. Uh, Becoming a contributor is figuring out what the problem is. There's a problem going on, there's a gap in the knowledge base of the people who are running the industry. And so then, how are you the solution who's going to now come in and offer a solution? That means it's going to require you to study the problem before you actually offer a solution. So, cultivate your signature. Key number 5: set standards, boundaries, and expectations. This is cultivate your signature. Key number 6: receive instruction. One of the things that I thought was very interesting in one of the reality TV shows that I used to watch, and it was Real Housewives of Atlanta, and it was at the very beginning their run. And Sheree was a character, and she was in the law offices with someone, and the guy was getting, kind of disrespectful and sassy or something. And then he said something very disrespectful, and then I think he said, I'm gonna check you, or something like that. And then Sheree basically said, who's gonna check me, boo? Who's gonna check me? And it's a very um, popular line. You'll see it in memes and things like that. But it's something that I've just kind of thought about over the years, because that happened many years ago, and it's gaining a lot of traction today. That you are the type of person who cannot receive instruction, no matter what it is someone is trying to explain to you. You get offended. Instruction basically is, you need instruction to move you forward. If you think about it, I always put it on this analogy level. If the sergeant gave a command to the platoon, forward march, and no one marched, then that means that they are not moving forward. But if he gives the command forward march and everyone marches, then the platoon is moving forward, right? And so they're all in unison, they're all in agreement. Receiving instruction thus means that you understand the importance of some guidance, some wisdom, some insight from people who have already walked out your steps. A lot of times you are going to be doing a new thing, and at the same time, there's nothing new under the sun. So the strategies for resolving a problem, those strategies may not be new under the sun, right? You just kind of take on those strategies. But sometimes the person who has made a bunch of mistakes in their past, and they are now passing the baton to you, can offer you wisdom on how to save you some time, and how to focus your attention. One of the things that I had to learn when I go back to the 2 year transition planning that I give to my students is that the instruction was obvious, that the community college environment is a 2 year environment. That's an obvious instruction. Could you stay there longer? Sure. But the obvious instruction is that I'm going to have to plan my transition from here, whether I go to a job or whether I go to college. I can't stay here forever. Take it to the university level. Okay, once you transfer, you are a junior, senior student. Um, and so you understand that eventually you're going to have to graduate from that environment. And so those are sort of like inherent instructions that we also still ignore. That you can be a perpetual student, never accomplishing anything, never doing anything, never, discovering your gifts and talents, never planning anything out, never moving forward. And so receiving instruction is a way for you to receive the wisdom and understanding that people have about this particular problem, and then of course adopt your strategy for also having to solve it, because remember, it is your life assignment. When you think about Queen Elizabeth, who died, right? A lot of people don't really get the idea that Queen Elizabeth really wasn't supposed to become queen that early. It was her uncle who was supposed to become king, and he decided to abdicate from the throne, and then he married a woman, a foreign woman, and then he lived the rest of his life, right, in obscurity. So when you think about that royal context, it was really supposed to be headed by kings. Well, the obvious instruction in the situation with Queen Elizabeth is that she had to step up to the mantle, because one person decided to abdicate, she would be the next person in line to take on the responsibility. So then she's a young person taking on the responsibility. She's also, I think, newly married, right? And so she has all these different responsibilities that she has to now consider in her mindset. Well, she stayed on that throne for many years, I think 7 decades, and she stayed the course. But she wouldn't have been able to stay the course without instruction, going from decade to decade, year to year, day to day, moment by moment. That took receiving instruction from the team of people around her, and really it's teams of people around her. Also looking at the citizenry of the country and understanding their needs. And then there were some distractions that she had to work through in terms of her son and his wife, Princess Diana, and then other types of um, issues that were going on at the time. But the point is that she stayed the course. She ran the country all the way to her death. She received instruction along the way. So that means when you think about it, you want to become a student of what you later want to master. And the only way that you can master it is actually receiving instruction as a student. And so cultivating your signature is going to require you to not only receive instruction from the books that you're going to have to read, the counsel that you're going to have to read, the laws you're going to have to know, the political views, the democracy, the problems that need to be solved within the organization or the country. That's the only way that you're going to uh, essentially really become queen. Essentially, she was queen the whole time, but at the end of her life, she was truly queen because she fulfilled her life assignment. That was she fulfilled what became her life assignment, right? So cultivate your signature. Key number 6, receive instruction. But your signature key number 7, accept correction. So if you are a type of a person who keeps making a lot of mistakes, and you just continue to thrive in making mistakes without any resolution, without learning, without an understanding, then you have a problem with correction. No one can correct you. No one can give you advice. No one can help you understand things. You're just going to do whatever you feel like you're going to do. There's a problem with that though, however, because if you're going to always be in a state of setback. What happens with people when they don't want to be corrected, they'll get off the path that requires them to be corrected because it's taken too long or they got offended, and they get on a path, uh, another path to try to seek some um, immediate gratification or success, right? And then they will call that a life success, as if that is what they were supposed to do the whole time, not realizing that they're still in a state of setback. Because on down the road, there's this cul-de-sac, there's this brick wall, there's this turnabout where you're going to have to hit a brick wall and return to those things that you did not resolve. It's better to get that resolved much earlier in life when you have the strength. But a lot of times you see people resolving or being forced to resolve, say for instance, financial matters now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. It does not make any sense for a person who is in their 70s and 80s to have to walk to work at Walmart, stand for 8 hours a day for minimum wage or whatever at that age. It does not make any sense. There's something that they missed, and I'm talking about full time. I'm not talking about someone who wants to, have a little distraction, and so let me go get a job just to have some little extra cash. I work 2 days a week, and that person already has a retirement plan. I'm not talking about that person. I'm talking about the person who something didn't go right in their 20s, right, and they never addressed it. Then they moved that problem, lack of problem solving in their 30s, they never addressed it. Then they moved it in their 40s when you really feel your mortality, and they still never addressed it. And so now they're in their 50s, their 60s, and their 70s, having to address what they should have addressed back then. Well, there were correction opportunities from 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There were correction opportunities. Now you're at a state where it's sort of hard for you to self-correct. You just have no other choice but to work what you got because you are living um, in a state of, I don't know, poverty or just not enough. You can still have Something, some enough, but not enough for you to feel free, right? To experience freedom. You should be sort of resting in your 70s and your 80s, right? So if you are having if look at the current state you're in, what does that look like, right? Okay, the only way to get out of it is through correction. Correction is really instruction, right? And so, if you want to stay in that, you will always stay in a perpetual setback. But if there is someone who's been trying to tell you something for the longest, and you've been ignoring that person, then that's the issue that you need to return to. You don't return to all of your issues. Sometimes when you go through correction, it may be a catch-all. You catch all and get all of them in terms of learning and becoming aware of what you did wrong. But the very thing that you ignored, the very thing that you disregarded, you held contempt for, you laughed about, you mocked, um, you were skeptical about, that's actually the thing that you need to accept correction about. Because if not, you're going to be no different than a hamster on a hamster's wheel, in a caged box running on a hamster's wheel and not being able to get out. And the caged box is see-through. It's glass. You can see out of it, but you can't get out of it because you won't accept correction to do what you need to do to get out of it. Like it's a caged bird. There's nothing worse than seeing an elephant who was mistreated as a circus animal, chained every day, and then you take off the chains, and the elephant still thinks he's in chains. He doesn't move about like he's free, right? And so when you are in setback because you refuse correction, which is a form of instruction, that's how you are. You are moving about in a way where you think you're free, but you're not. You're just in a hamster's wheel, or you have been living so long in a particular type of state of mind, a state of bound strongholds in your mind, that it's hard for you to leave that, to exit that, because there was comfort. You knew the chains. You knew when they put the chains on. You knew how long you had to stay in chains. You knew how to move about with your chains. You knew how not to go too far with your chains. And so your signature, cultivating your signature, is going to require that you accept correction so you can get out of those chains. Otherwise, that's just going to be your life. So this is cultivate your signature. Key number 7: accept correction. This is cultivate your signature. Key number 8: pursue financial wellness. Financial wellness suggests that you must be financially sick in some area of your life, right? It could be credit cards. It could be the fact that you still have not created and sustained an emergency savings fund, and you're now in your 40s, right? It may be hard for people to perceive certain things in their 20s because they think they are invincible. We all thought that we weren't going to die. But in our 40s, we begin to feel truly our mortality. And that's when we realize that, oh, we can actually die. And that to me is the time to uh, pull it together, or give yourself another opportunity to do it right. If you look at your 40s and you see and you envision the retirement age of 65, and then you subtract, you realize that you have 25 more years to get it right, right, to pull this thing together. So if you didn't do what you were supposed to do in your 20s and your 30s, then you can now set your 40s to be of that mindset, because it's literally a hop, skip, and a jump from 50 to 60 to 70. I literally remember myself being 38, and then somehow I jumped to 48, and I'm 48 in this year, 2023. And so, when you're thinking about financial wellness, think about the financial freedom. Going and getting the lottery is not financial freedom, because there's no learning process. All you're doing is essentially procrastinating the learning process you need in order to become financially stable, a great financial manager, financially well, financially free, anything like that, right? And so you still need the learning process. The learning process might include taking responsibility for those two to three outstanding bills and begin paying them down. Going through the process, keeping a financial journal, keeping something, keeping a task list, keeping it before you that this is something that you care about that you need to begin working on. Because then, if you work on it, then you can also work on your credit score. You can work on rebuilding a relationship with that company, right? The credit card company. And then now you can reassess after you pay down those three and say, okay, I'm really not that much of a credit card person. I could care less. But there are some places that require a credit card and I don't want to use my debit card. So I'm just going to keep one, right? So now that's leading to, financial wellness and your thinking. And financial wellness is essentially being well in all areas of your life that require finances. Life wellness is just being well in all of your life, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, etc., right? And so then my main task was struggling with um, creating a savings plan and then creating an emergency savings fund. Again, there are opportunities. You got Susie Orman out here, you got Dave Ramsey, you got all these different YouTube channels where they try to help you understand these concepts. But it goes to your attitude about the situation and why you feel like you don't have to do that. Because if you don't save, there's the implication that you believe that you'll be able to depend on whoever it is that you feel like you can depend on. I can always move into her house, or I can always ask her, or I can always do this, or I can always go get a loan. I can always go get a payday loan, a title loan, or whatever it is that you are leaning on as a crutch. So just because you were able to solve the problem, the immediate problem, by going to get some sort of alternative solution, does not mean that you actually solve the problem. Because if you don't address your financial issues, it's going to affect your signature. That's why you have all these people who end up pushing the fraud aspect of their life because um, they were focused more on the money than they were on the signature. If you think about the current case, that resolved court case, and now she's going to prison, Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes did not cultivate her signature. She had a grand idea about the one drop and being able to do multiple medical diagnostic tests from that one drop, but she was initially a med student, pre-medical student, and then she had problems with needles, and then she moved into engineering, I think chemical engineering, and then she dropped out in the sophomore year. And so then she connected with a professor to try to get him to be an investor. And then she got multiple big name investor people that drove the the valuation of the company to billion dollar status. And then she was being um, um, connected or associated with Steve Jobs and all of the other greats, but she had no learning process. She had no learning process. And a lot of times when you're pushing certain ideas, it is oftentimes based upon a money lack. There's a money lack somewhere, and you need to push some quick idea, and you're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing it until you get what you need. There's a situation with Charlie Javis, right? She is the one who claimed that she had about 4 million users for her Frank website that catered to individuals who had to complete the FAFSA, and she managed to fool JP Morgan Chase, in which they bought the company for $175 million. But she and Elizabeth Holmes were of the same mindset as many silicon investor mindsets are: fake it till you make it. But that's not building a signature. That's not actually cultivating a signature. And the signature is you learning and becoming master. So the financial wellness, if you pursue a better financial understanding, individual personal finance, you will less likely be inclined to pursue the fraud aspect of it, because the finances can affect the fraud and the fraud can affect the finances. But if you cultivate your signature and focusing on getting your financial house in order, you may have to work that job for a long time until you pay off all your bills and you continue to work on your signature, your work. Um, um, for a good time, you set maybe like a maybe 2 to 5 year plan. You may have to do that. Whereas what often people do, what people oftentimes do is jump from one thing that's not giving them money quick enough and jump to another thing that's going to give them money quick enough, but then they're sacrificing the signature. Then they are sacrificing the life assignment, they are sacrificing their reputation, etc. So this is cultivate your signature. Key number 8, pursue financial wellness. Cultivate your signature. Key number 9, learn the craft. I can't stress this enough, that if you're going to do anything, you need to do it well. You need to do it with the right understanding, with the right mastery of information. That means you're going to have study hours. If you go to YouTube, right, and you'll see people who clock in 9 hours of studying a particular concept, right? They may be wanting to become a doctor or a teacher or anything like that. And so you'll see that they are building the capacity for study. They are building the capacity to respect learning and respect knowledge and respect understanding, right? That they're not just sort of cheating the process. Okay, once I take a test, I would try to guess the answers and then hopefully I can pass, right? You wouldn't want a person who had a C average as a doctor. You just wouldn't. That that's not to say that a doctor wouldn't have C's in some classes, could be electives, but in their main specialty, you don't want that doctor to have a C. You don't want a teacher to have a whole bunch of F's. You don't want a person who is trying to guide you to have a lot of failures that the person did not resolve. People can still have failures. People can still struggle. People can still miss the mark. But what you want to see is what did they do to resolve the problem. So when you are learning your craft, you are learning a set, a category, uh, context, um, environment, hierarchy of problems. You're coming in as a solution to solve a particular problem. You can't solve every problem within your industry, but there is a specific problem that you're solving. So then when you are within the academic context and you're learning, that's the time to learn how to problem solve. You don't wait till you get to the job or to the career or to the field and say, I'm just now I'm going to solve problems now. No, if you are struggling to take a problem set out of your math book and try to solve the problem while you are a student, you're going to struggle as a leader. That's what's going on right now. The people who you have, a lot of people who have been elected, and you look at them, it's like, how in the world were they elected? How? But they, some of them ran unencumbered, some of them ran unopposed, and some of them were just loud. And then some had some co-signers, people who were very important. People say, hey, elect her, spoke on their behalf. But then once they got the job, once they got into the political office, you see that they know nothing. They have no new ideas. They have no problem solving abilities. All they do is talk loud, yell, incite some kind of, semi revolution, try to get things started, create confusion, cause confusion, sustain confusion. And that's the bulk of who they are. They have no craft, or they are crafting, but it's not based upon expertise or knowledge or anything that is worthy of trying to use to solve a problem. And so somewhere there's a gap in their understanding about learning, and a gap in their understanding about procrastinating the learning process, and a gap in their understanding about what the assignment is, what the problem is, how it actually should be solved, right? I always criticize people who went to medical school for many, many years, residency, worked in the field as a medical doctor who now wants to become a political um, person, who wants to become a senator, who wants to become a congressman. You have no mastery in that. You have mastery in being a doctor. You spent all those years in pre-med, med school, residency, working. That's where you have built your expertise. That's what your patients know you by. That's what the field knows you by. So why are you now jumping ship out of your expertise into something for which you have not truly prepared? People think just because they got elected that that was enough expertise that they needed to have. All that is just a con game. It's just a classic uh confidence game. I'm gonna give you an indication that I look like I know what I'm talking about. Go ahead and elect me, and once I get in, I'm gonna do all these different things. But then once they get in, they have no understanding. They don't know anything. They don't know anything about how to solve problems within a political context. They didn't study that. Even I would give them the benefit of the doubt if they did a little certificate program in college, like political science, or if they actually did do a second major in political science, or the graduate degree is in political science. Okay, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt, because then at least you have some theory behind you. Maybe not practical, but you definitely have some theory, and you have a guiding force. But if you're just jumping out of being a doctor over here and now you want to become a political person over here, and you have no understanding about what it is that you got to do, that's going to be a problem for all the people who are depending upon you. It's like the George Santos. He lied. He lied about everything on his resume. He lied. It is the absolute best example of faking it till you make it. He made it. Now he gets a paycheck. He's going to get retirement, right? But he never learned the craft. He learned the craft of lying. That's what he understands. That's what he knows. So when you are cultivating your signature, you will never want to be branded as a fraud. You never want to be branded as a con. You never want to be branded as a person who knows nothing. You never want to be branded as a person who mimics. That all you are is just a mimic. That's all you do. That you are just a copy and paste of something else that you copied and pasted, right? So cultivate your signature. Key number 9, learn the craft. This is cultivate your signature. Key number 10, complete the assignment. So this is very important, because when you set goals, and this is based upon just standard goal setting, you set the goal, you endure the goal, you complete the goal. So enduring has its advantages and disadvantages, because a lot of times when you have to endure something, you may have to be in isolation, right? Depending on the type of life assignment, the type of gifts and talents that you have. But it's going to take some time. Completing the assignment is, there's so much there in that one statement, because completion is always going to be connected to instruction, and instruction might be connected to correction if you didn't pass something. Assignment always depends upon, it could be many levels, it can be your life assignment, the larger umbrella of your life assignment, what that is. Then of course completing the assignment is going to be based upon your understanding of how to apply your gifts, talents, and skill sets, right? And so completion, you have to envision completion in mind. Now, completion, it does depend, because it's either you're going to pass the baton to the next person, you're going to complete whatever you're going to complete. Your completion aspect of it could be 5 to 10 years that you are solving this problem. You're using all your expertise, your gifts and talents to solve this problem. And it's going to take 10 years. And then you're going to pass the baton at retirement to the next person. So you're either going to be that type of person, or you're going to be Queen Elizabeth, who dies off the job. She never retired. She never retired. She saw the goal. She saw the life assignment all the way to the end of her death. So it depends on what it is that you're trying to solve. She had to be queen for the greater part of her life, I think for 70 years, and then when it was time to give it over, she died and had to get and then by default it was given over. So she never quit the job. She never retired. She knew what her life assignment was. So when you are thinking about completing the assignment, you have to understand what your capacity is. You have to understand what your capability is, your personality, your attitude. You can't be jealous of the assignment, meaning that a lot of times you may not have gotten the things that you needed to get when you were younger or even when you were older, but you may be the generational person who makes sure that the people coming after you get what it is that you wanted to get. Well, don't be stingy with it. Don't hoard it. Don't hoard knowledge. Don't hoard the assignment because you're now jealous that that other people get to benefit from what you really wanted years ago. Um, and that happens. It happens if you think about it on a very basic level. Say, for instance, you didn't get you didn't get a car when you were in high school, right? You were the oldest, and you didn't get the car. But when you left to go to college, it freed up the money in the house in a way so that mom was able to get the card for the next child. So now you're jealous of that. You think about that. It bothers you, right? So then when you go out into the world and you want to make a difference, you see someone who looks just like you, and you see someone who looks just like the sibling who got what he or she wanted from mom. And so what you do is instead of the helping the person who actually looks just like you and who needs it more, you give it to the person who doesn't need it. You give it to the person because you are jealous that the one who needs it is who needs it more. You project onto that person, well, I didn't have anybody helping me, and so I had to, help myself. I had to ride the bus and I had to do all these types of things, so you need to do it too. But then you give it to this person over here who could care less about any gift you give him or her. They don't care. The person doesn't care. It doesn't. They are very much indifferent to the gift, right? It's not a gift for them. In fact, it's really a burden for them because they didn't ask for it. And so when you are completing the assignment, you have to think about that too, because that's part of your signature, that you applying the gifts and talents appropriately, and understanding when there are shifts in life where you have to sort of appeal to a specific audience, so, to make sure that they get what they need, right? And then completing the assignment is also going to be about um, understanding the time frame for each of the different parts and levels of the assignment. The assignment is like a big 250 puzzle uh, pieces, right? You your it's the bigger picture, right? But the part that you have to do per year or per day or per moment or whatever is a puzzle piece. It's a vision, but there's a puzzle piece. The first puzzle piece could be the discovery of who you are. The second puzzle piece can begin with you enrolling in courses, right? And beginning to develop in that particular talent. The next puzzle piece could be you assigning yourself, in a sense, to become a volunteer in the area that you feel passionate about. The next puzzle piece could be having a mentor, a person who mentors you uh, throughout your academic career, then throughout your workforce career. The next puzzle piece could be some instructions that you have to get as a result of moving forward. The next puzzle piece could be correction, something that you missed, some class you didn't pass, some understanding that you missed opportunity, anything like that, right? Other puzzle pieces could be just more training, more professional development, more understanding, more guidance, more honor, honoring the people who paved the way, respecting them, and so the puzzle pieces can go on for years, but it's also part of the your life assignment you developing in your life assignment, right? So when you are thinking about cultivating your signature and completing the assignment, you're going to have to take in many factors of who you are, what you can do, where you're going to be, because talent and geography go hand in hand. You can be extremely talented but be in the wrong place, right? You can what you are matters just as much as where you are. uh if you look at Coach Prime, his name escapes me right now, but he was um at Jackson State, right? And he was having a strong impact on those men, and he was coaching him, and he was giving them life lessons. He brought in people to help them see things and understand things about life. But then and he was very well received. But then he takes a coaching job for more money, and I think with Colorado, and he's getting criticized. He's getting criticized for the prayers that he has. He's getting criticized for his techniques. He's also criticizing the fact that the NFL, I think the NFL only took one person during the NFL draft from an HBCU. Now he's criticizing all the different things, which is interesting because he left an HBCU. And so you have to understand that where you are matters just as much as what you are. He was more effective in one environment than in another. You can be somewhere, your talent can be the most productive, effective, wonderful, insightful, directive, contributing thing ever. But if you place it in the wrong context, it may not work. It won't work if it's in the wrong context. And so that's going to affect you being able to complete the assignment. And therefore, that's why you have to understand the assignment. Because once you understand the assignment, if you look at Moses in the Bible, was supposed to lead the children of Israel. There were some setbacks, right? And they had to go around that mountain for many years, for I think 40 years, right? And then, and along the way, he was receiving instruction from God, and then he applied that instruction. However, what prevented him from actually going into the promised land was the very last instruction. And God told him to speak to the rock, but Moses hit the rock. Now, there are a lot of biblical implications, interpretations. That is beyond the scope of this particular audio here. You can take some time to research that on your own. But ignoring that instruction, disobeying that instruction, um, prevented him actually from going into the promised land. So you wonder, did he actually complete the assignment? Because you have to look at the original goal that God wanted him to do was to lead the people. Did the leading require him to also enter the promised land, right? And that's something that you have to think about. So I have to suggest, I have to believe that he did not complete the assignment, because what happens is when he disobeyed, there was no longer room for correction. There was no more room for recovery or restoration, because they were already right at the gates, so to speak. And so to give him correction would be reminiscent of having all of the children of Israel to walk around that mountain again. There was no more time. And so they had to push forth. They had to go forward. So then they left. He Moses went on ahead and passed the baton to Joshua, who then actually led the children into the promised land. So completing the assignment, it comes with instructions, it comes with guidelines, it comes with directions, and you have to adhere to it. You have to do it as instructed, as the assignment instruct. You cannot deviate and then call it success. You cannot deviate and then call it honor. Because if God is telling you to do one thing and you do something completely different, there may not be an opportunity for you to recover. You may not have that opportunity because at least if you get correction, the gift of correction, you shouldn't need correction if you do it right the first time. But if you do, if God affords you the opportunity to correct, it should you should look at that as a gift, because then if you look at it as a gift and you take it as a gift, then you can learn from it and then you can get back on track to completing the assignment. So this is Cultivate Your Signature. Key number 10, complete the assignment.